Hey, Moby, what made you want to do another documentary?
I'm not quite sure. What do you mean another doc?
Well, like the one on Netflix, the other documentary you have.
Oh, you know, that one, to be honest with you, I don't really remember that one. It was I think that was more about music and a little bit of biography, but I that first one I was the subject of it, but I had nothing to do with the actual making of it.
I see. So this documentary is all written by you and it's all about you versus the other one that's on Netflix. This one's actually better. Yes, me.
Yeah, I mean, this one, the first one, even though I was the subject and clearly I was there when it was made, I've never actually seen it, so I don't know what's even included in that first one. And this one is obviously very, it's equal parts like honest and experimental and surreal. You know, at the basically to challenge my ignorance, I should probably watch that first one. So that way I'm not stumped by questions about the second documentary.
Great answer. I've noticed in your interviews, I was studying as much as I can about you. I've met you before at Last Chance for Animals, by the way, red carpet. I talked to you there a little bit about activism and stuff. And now you always give great, intricate, complete answers. So thank you.
It's the product, I guess, of being I don't know, just an uptight guy from Connecticut.
Even after watching this documentary, I was thinking that you could make another documentary about all your orchestral music that you make that nobody knows about, but it's a whole other world of the music of Moby.
Yeah, I mean, I love making movies. I mean, it's almost a compulsion on my part to just be constantly making things. But having said that, just because I compulsively am compelled to make things doesn't necessarily mean anyone would have a lot of interest in them. So I would love to make a documentary about, working with an orchestra, working with a gospel choir, working with string quartets and different vocalists, as I did for the album Reprise. I might enjoy watching that, and maybe you would. I wonder how many other people would actually want to see that.
On behalf of all the Moby fans and all your fans, we want to see it. I want to see it. What compliment did you receive one time from a important person or famous that really got to you, that really you were shocked and surprised that they complimented you like that?
It's a lovely question. I'm trying to think. Okay, here's an interesting one. In 1996, I released an album called Animal Rights, and it was a complete failure. It sold nothing. It got terrible reviews, but 3 people told me that they liked it. One was Bono. I ran into him and he told me that he loved that album as much as the first Clash album. The other was Axl Rose, who told me that he used to listen to it on repeat as he drove around LA. And the third was the most interesting piece of fan mail I've ever received. Is I received a letter from Terence Trent D'Arby on official Terence Trent D'Arby stationery telling me how much he appreciated that album. So
Bono, Axl Rose, and Terence Trent D'Arby, those are some of the top elite guys in music. So yeah, that answers my question.
It was an interesting time because like a lot of my friends in the world of electronic music at that, in 96, 97 were having like phenomenal success, like the Chemical Brothers, the Prodigy. And I was playing to 20 or 30 people a night, having made an album that no one wanted to listen to.
What challenges did you have, you and Rob Gordon, writing it and having him directing it and you producing it and you being in it and narrating it? What difficulties did you experience?
First started working on it, it went in a slightly more conventional direction. But then at some point, we realized that the more conventional it was, the less interest we had in it. Because as you know, I mean, there's so many music documentaries out there. And a lot of them, and I don't mean this as a criticism, but a lot of them are very similar. You know, they have a similar structure, they use similar devices. And so Rob the director, and I just gave ourselves this challenge of like, let's try to be honest, but let's try to make a music documentary that's unlike anything we've ever seen. And at that point, we just got rid of almost all of the conventional devices that would normally be in a music documentary and tried to replace them with things that we thought were more interesting.
Moby, off the top of your head, what are 2 documentaries about music or musicians or bands that you loved?
I have to say, I quite liked the Metallica Some Kind of Monster documentary, just because it was so unexpected for Metallica. Like, I assumed Metallica, if they were going to make a documentary, it would be about, you know, private planes and stadiums, and it wouldn't be about their therapy sessions with a psychologist. So I quite liked that. I have to say, I quite liked the Nina Simone documentary, just because before seeing it, I hadn't known that much about her history. I only knew some of the music, and it did such a great job sort of presenting her in a historical context, and suddenly her life and career made so much more sense.
Okay, why should people want to go see your doc?
It's a good question. And clearly I'm biased. So in some ways, I'm probably the last person who should answer that question. But from my perspective, the documentary, I think there's a lot of very potentially interesting, unconventional creativity and creative expression in it. But the underlying message of the documentary is existential, you know, pertaining to how I have tried to create meaning or happiness and my response to the human condition. And the reason I wanted to talk about that in the documentary is to try and address the ways in which we all wrestle with the human condition, because I'm really grateful when other people tell their stories, you know, especially if they're willing to be honest. And so I just thought to myself, with Moby Doc, let me try to be honest and let me talk about my struggles and my attempts to, you know, to make sense of the human condition.
Was the making and producing of Moby Doc part of your therapy and your pursuit of happiness?
I mean, it's the nature of making almost any piece of creative output, whether it's a song or a book or a movie, there is that, the therapeutic aspect of it, especially if you're making something that has an autobiographical component and you're releasing it into the world for people to potentially respond to. You know, it creates this dialectic whereby you can actually learn about yourself through other people's perspective. Having said that, I don't read reviews and I don't really read comments. So when I talk about other people's perspective, I'm more talking about actual conversations like the conversation we're having or conversations I might have with friends.
Now, after making Moby Doc, did you learn any additional things about you?
What I learned, and I think it's also from making Moby Doc, but also just getting older and, you know, doing different, you know, therapeutic work, spiritual work, is that, again, going back to this response to the human condition, because the human condition is baffling. You know, we should all be baffled by the human condition because we're alive for a few decades in a universe that's 15 billion years old. And I've realized, like, we all are engaged in so many activities that are responses to the human condition. But I think the best response that I've learned over time is simply like a degree of acceptance around the confusing aspects of the human condition and finding happiness and purpose through a degree of service and also through a degree of simplicity, just like being calm and contented with nature, with friendships, with health, with animals, with creativity, you know, and not necessarily needing giant validation, you know, like pursuing huge amounts of success is definitely not a recipe for happiness, which is one of the things I tried to show in the movie.
Hey, Moby, it was great talking to you. And I love how you put your heart and soul in this project and made it so transparent. So now we know how truly who you are. I loved it.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, Moby, I'm going to promote this as much as I can through FabTV.com and get it to all the old and new Moby fans. Great talking to you.
It was really nice speaking to you again.